Greetings everyone, welcome back to Lemex Effects. Now, why are we doing this? We're doing this because in my The Little Mermaid video, I said that changing the race of a character changes what the story means. In that movie, Ariel was a character who was rebellious, self-centered, and self-destructive. So by choosing to make her race black, the author is saying that black people are rebellious, self-centered, and self-destructive. See, by choosing the race of a character, the character becomes a symbol of what the author thinks the people of that race are like. I said that when race swapping a character, everything you know about that race colors the meaning of the character's actions and place in the story. Example, Caucasians are known to grow out of their rebellious phases when they are no longer teenagers, but blacks are known to act like rebellious teenagers even when they are old in their 60s. So Ariel goes from being a rebellious Caucasian teenager to being a rebellious black person. This video will show the power of race swapping by showing how changing the races of the characters of the Chronicles of Narnia changes the story itself drastically. In the beginning, the story was just about 4 kids who need to fight the White Witch to save the kingdom from her rule, right? Now, let's race swap one character. Now, in A Chronicles of Narnia, there are 4 British children called the Pevensies, and we're going to race swap one of them to see how it changes the story. However, what the character symbolizes when we make them black will depend on which character we choose to be race swapped. You see, the black person, he cannot be Peter because Peter is supposed to be ruler over all the others.
That, oh man, is Care Paravel of the 4 thrones, in one of which you must sit as king. I show it to you because you are the firstborn, and you will be high king over all the rest.
That would mean that the black person rules over the Caucasians, and that will not happen. If it is Susan or Lucy, the race swap character would be a black woman who is traveling with and trying to help a group of Caucasians. So she would symbolize the black woman who disregarded black people so they can be like Caucasians. Basically how black feminism started. If the black person is Edmund, Edmund is the Judas Iscariot who sided with the devil. So the author would be saying that black people are traitorous and more likely to side with evil and need Christianity to save them from their devilish ways. In short, race swapping only one character is racist no matter what you do. There is no safe way to race swap a character without insulting someone. Also, before we continue, I want to explain symbolism, because that's what we're talking about. Incidentally, I was going to do so much work to explain symbolism when the work was already done. So let's ask Google types of symbolism. 8 different types should allow me to see which one of them that I want. Let's see. No. We want this one, allegory. Allegory is a character, event, or place that delivers a larger message about a real-world concern or occurrence. In other words, it's a story in which most characters and plot developments are symbols for something else in which the story in its entirety symbolizes a larger phenomenon in the real world or society. So, if I race swap the Little Mermaid or any of the characters in the Chronicles of Narnia, I am making an allegory about the relationships between Caucasians and blacks in the real world. I'm taking a larger issue from an entire society and scaling it down to be about one person or 2 people, or in the Chronicles of Narnia, 4 people. Also, someone said in one of my comments that The Little Mermaid did not say in either variation that it was about racism. However, the point of an allegory is, and I quote, rather than coming right out and saying it, allegories use characters and events to reveal a hidden meaning or message. So, we are not supposed to come right out and say it. They are hidden meanings, and they are hidden for a reason. Proverbs chapter 20 verse 5. Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. So we are men that understand what happens in the real world. So we draw out these hidden meanings or allegories by looking at how the symbolic characters are used in the story. In the case of Little Mermaid, by making a black woman rebellious and self-destructive, no one would come out and say black people are self-destructive because that would be racist to come out and say. So Ariel was used as an allegory for the majority of black women. In the case of the Chronicles of Narnia, if I see one black woman following after 3 Caucasians, that is an allegory for a larger issue. Similarly, the fact that Peter cannot be black is an allegory for the larger issue that there is no country where black people hold the highest level of rulership. Even all of Africa is ruled by Caucasian countries because of the scramble for Africa. Now, let's see what happens if we race swap 2 of these characters to be black. If the 2 black people are the women, it symbolizes black women abandoning black men to be with Caucasian men. It would also symbolize Caucasian men trying to replace Caucasian women with black women because they have a fetish for the black women, right? Also, since the race will die without the man, because as we covered in multiple videos, the racial gene is passed on through the father, this would symbolize the extermination of the black race. Similarly, if the 2 black people were the boys, it would symbolize the extermination of the Caucasian race. Also, it would show black men having a fetish for Caucasian women. Now, if we chose that the 2 black people would be the male and the female, we know that the male cannot be Peter because that would be Peter ruling over everyone, and there's not going to be any black person ruling over Caucasians. So the black male has to be Edmund. So that would symbolize the woman being docile and obedient to the Caucasians, but the black man is a crook or a gangster who sides with evil and needs to be saved. In other words, there is no safe way to race swap 2 characters without insulting someone. So, what happens when we try 3 black people? Now, the focus changes what the story represents based on who the single Caucasian is. Now, if the Caucasian is one of the 2 girls, rather than being about the extermination of Caucasians, it's about their population dwindling, as if they stopped producing as many children or produced much fewer boys. Sounds morbid, and I'm sure no one wants to say that. Now, if the Caucasian is Peter, then it says, even though the blacks are in the majority as far as population, the Caucasian man still rules over them. So they are still minorities politically. Incidentally, remember when I told you in the woke video that Americans don't know what the word free means, even though it's a low level elementary level word? See, the definition of free means the absence of foreign dominion. So, as long as a Caucasian rules over blacks, the black race, by definition, is not free. In short, making the one Caucasian Peter is like saying, no matter how many of you there are, or how many liberties you get, you black people are still slaves. Emancipation does not equal freedom. That sounds like an insult to black people, and I'm sure no one would want to say that. No one's going to stand for that message. Now, if the Caucasian is Edmund, then it's saying when blacks are thriving, the Caucasians will always side with evil in order to sabotage the black population. Caucasians would rather side with the devil if it meant preventing blacks from getting their own land and kingdom. And I'm sure no one wants to say that, so there's no safe way to race swap 3 black characters. Now, let's talk about 4 black people. And before we talk about 4 black people, there is something that I need you to know about the original story of the Chronicles of Narnia. And that is setting, because setting also affects symbolism. The setting is when it takes place. It takes place during the Second World War. Why is that important? Because even though the Second World War was called the World War, the entire world was not in that war. Arabians were not in that war. Many Asian countries were not in that war. Many black countries were not in that war. It was really a war between the Caucasian race. So the world were the Caucasians. In the same way, in the original story, the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve should be everybody, but the only ones that were on the throne as the sons of Adam and the daughters of Eve were the Caucasians. They were representing the entire world. Why is that important? It is important because if we have 4 black people who left the entire world in order to go to their own country, that symbolizes that these are 4 black people who decided that the wars that the Caucasians fought among themselves had nothing to do with them. They decided to concern themselves with governing themselves and getting their own land. Ecclesiasticus chapter 11 verse 9. Strive not in a matter that concerneth thee not, and sit not in judgment with sinners. So yes, in the Bible is a commandment that when other races are having wars with each other, mind your own dang business. However, doing so threatens the rulership of the white witch. So she tries to kill them. Incidentally, one of the black boys thinks it's unfair to rend the kingdom or rulership over black people from the white witch, and the real reason, he doesn't like that another black man is telling him what to do. Therefore, he goes to betray his race to the white witch. As it turns out, the white witch wants to kill him too, even though he helped her, because she's racist against humans. Yeah, racist against humans. Now, Aslan, the literal Jesus Christ of the story, has to save these 4 black people from the white witch. Now I understand that there are some of you who thought that there's a safe way to race swap a character without being insulting because you were insulted by how race swapping was done. However, now you can see that there is no safe way to race swap characters if your goal is to not be insulting. Every change has a different meaning, and every meaning will always be insulting. In fact, not only is there no safe way to race swap characters, there is no safe way to put blacks and Caucasians in the same story without being insulting for anyone who knows any amount of history or anyone who watches any news that is outside of America. Now, also you know how race swapping characters changes the allegorical meaning of the characters and therefore the entire story. Because these allegorical meanings are based on what we see in the real world. Also, if you don't like the representation, then you have to change the narrative. Meaning, if you don't like that your first black representation is a rebellious teenager, then your race needs to stop acting like rebellious teenagers. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 11. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure and whether it be right. In fact, now that I think about it, there are people who say it is not fair how movies and TV depict minority people, and they proudly say that it is racist. So I'll get 1 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 3. Talk no more so exceeding proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. So you are judged by your actions. You are depicted on TV by your actions. So if you don't like the depiction or the representation, change the narrative by changing your actions. Actually, you know what? I'm still not done, because some speak so exceeding proudly about how they don't like how they're depicted, but their actions don't really show that they care because 1, they keep buying these movies. 2, they don't make movies themselves, even though we have YouTube for someone to make their own dang movies. Now, I have touched on these different symbolic meanings in brief. However, I didn't go into depth and pull historical evidence for why these allegories would have the meanings that I said they would have. But that would mean that I had to give each race swap its own episode. And if you ask, I might do it. I've already done it actually for, let's say, if there were no black people, because as it turns out, remember when I said that even though they're called the sons of Adam and daughters of Eve, which would be everybody, they only put Caucasians on the throne? For some who hear that, that sounds like white supremacy, and I covered that. So if you want to see that, I'm going to put it right here. So if you want me to do a full video on every other segment of this video, then all you need to do is ask. Also, like and subscribe and leave a comment about what you learned here today so we can get some discussions going. But until then, I'll see you next time on Lemex Effects.